She wasn't supposed to be there, wasn't supposed to carry that rifle. Hell, according to her official orders, Technical Sergeant Holly Ramirez was just supposed to observe, take notes, and stay out of the way while the real operators did their job. But when 12 hostile fighters pinned down an entire SEAL platoon in the Iraqi desert, when America's finest couldn't get a clean shot through the heat shimmer and sandstorm winds, she did something that changed everything. She walked into that kill zone, set up her rifle, and made the impossible look easy. 12 targets, 90 seconds, 0 misses. Before I show you exactly how she did it, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from and hit subscribe, because what happened next made a SEAL commander question everything he thought he knew about combat. Now let's get into it. The convoy rolls to a stop 3 clicks south of the compound. Dust hangs in the air like a curtain, turning the midday sun into a copper disk that burns through your eyelids even when you close them. The heat is the kind that makes your gear feel like it weighs twice as much, makes sweat evaporate before it can cool you down, makes breathing feel like inhaling from an oven. Technical Sergeant Holly Ramirez steps down from the rear vehicle. Mid-20s, average height, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun that's already collecting grit from the wind. She carries standard issue gear, a plate carrier worn smooth from use, an M4 carbine slung across her chest, and a compact observation kit that marks her as support personnel rather than a trigger puller. What makes her different isn't visible at first glance. It's in the way she moves, how her eyes track the horizon in methodical sweeps, how she positions herself with clear sightlines to multiple angles without seeming to try. The kind of awareness that comes from somewhere deeper than a training manual. Lieutenant Commander Jackson Drake hits the ground with the confidence of someone who's done this 100 times before. His SEAL platoon fans out with practiced efficiency, each man finding his sector, each weapon covering a different angle. No wasted motion, no unnecessary communication. Just professionals doing what they do best. Drake glances at Holly with the kind of look senior operators give support staff. Not hostile, not dismissive, just neutral acknowledgement that she's there to do a job that doesn't involve shooting. Sergeant Ramirez, you'll observe from the TOC vehicle, will be running interdiction drills on that ridgeline. He gestures toward a series of rocky outcrops that rise like broken teeth from the desert floor. Stay on comms, take your notes, and keep your head down if things get interesting. Understood, sir. Holly's voice carries no emotion, no argument. She moves toward the Tactical Operations Center, a heavily armored truck bristling with communications equipment. But she doesn't stay there. The compound sits in a shallow valley, surrounded by terrain that offers both cover and nightmares for anyone trying to approach it. Intelligence reports say it's a staging area for arms smuggling, a waypoint where weapons flow from one set of bad actors to another. The SEAL team's mission is surveillance and interdiction, identify the players, disrupt the network, collect evidence, simple on paper, never simple in execution. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb sets up the sniper element on the ridge, a natural formation that provides elevation and concealment. His spotter, Petty Officer Hayes, ranges the compound through high-powered optics, calling out distances and landmarks. Main entrance at 800 meters, side structure at 950. That tower in the back is pushing 1100. Webb settles behind his rifle, a precision instrument that costs more than most cars. Winds shifting every 30 seconds. These thermals are going to make this interesting. Below them, the compound shows signs of activity. Vehicles arrive and depart with irregular timing. Figures move between buildings with the casual confidence of people who think they're safe. Drake coordinates from the command position, monitoring multiple radio frequencies, tracking his team's positions on a tactical display. Everything is going according to plan. Then the plan falls apart. The ambush comes from nowhere and everywhere at once. 1 second, the desert is quiet except for wind and distant engine noise. The next, the world explodes with the distinctive crack of high-powered rifles and the deeper hammer of heavy machine guns. The hostile force isn't in the compound. They're in the rocks above it, in positions that give them overlapping fields of fire on the entire SEAL position. Whoever planned this understood American tactics, knew where the snipers would set up, knew where the command element would position itself. Webb's first indication something is wrong comes when a bullet impacts 6 inches from his head, throwing rock fragments into his face. He rolls away instinctively, abandoning his carefully prepared shooting position. Contact! Multiple shooters, high ground east and north. Hayes is already calling out positions, but there are too many targets, too many angles. Drake's voice cuts through the radio traffic, sharp with controlled urgency. All elements, we are in a prepared kill zone. Find cover and return fire. The SEAL platoon reacts with the speed and precision that comes from endless training. They bound toward cover, suppressing enemy positions with controlled bursts, moving as units rather than individuals. But the hostile fire is too accurate, too well coordinated. Petty Officer Martinez takes a round through his leg. Petty Officer Chen's radio explodes from a near miss that leaves him dazed and bleeding from the ear. The platoon's mobility is disappearing fast. Webb tries to engage targets from his new position, but every time he establishes a sight picture, heat shimmer from the sun-baked rocks turns his scope image into a dancing blur. He fires at a muzzle flash and misses. Adjusts for wind and thermal lift, fires again. The round impacts 2 feet to the left. I can't get a clean shot. Webb's frustration bleeds through his professional composure. The air down there is like soup. Hayes tries to spot for him, calling corrections based on where he sees impacts. But without solid hits, without the ability to suppress enemy positions, the SEAL element is being systematically torn apart. Drake makes the calculation that every commander dreads. They're losing this fight. They need to break contact, evacuate casualties, and regroup. But movement means exposure, and exposure means more casualties. That's when Holly Ramirez does something that makes everyone on the radio net stop what they're doing. Commander Drake, this is Ramirez. Request permission to move to firing position. There's a pause. Drake is processing casualties, coordinating fire support, trying to keep his people alive. He doesn't have time for whatever the support sergeant thinks she can contribute. Negative, Ramirez. Stay in the TOC. We'll handle this. Sir, with respect, your sniper element can't get hits through the thermals. I can. Another pause, longer this time. Drake knows his snipers. Webb is one of the best in the Navy. If he can't make the shots, what makes a support technician think she can? But men are bleeding. The situation is deteriorating. And something in Ramirez's voice suggests this isn't bravado. You have 30 seconds to convince me you're not wasting my time, Sergeant. Holly doesn't waste words. I've been watching the valley since we arrived. The thermal patterns cycle every 45 seconds. There's a 3-second window when the air stabilizes. Your shooters are fighting the conditions. I'm reading them. Drake has made career-defining decisions with less information. Webb, let her take a shot. One chance. Holly moves from the TOC to a position 50 meters south, a slight depression in the ground that provides a different angle on the valley. She's carrying something that wasn't in any manifest, a rifle case that's seen hard use. She opens it with practiced efficiency. The weapon inside is a custom build, pieces assembled from a dozen different manufacturers, modifications that speak of someone who understands ballistics at a level most people never reach. The scope is competition grade. The barrel is hand-lapped. The trigger breaks like glass. Webb watches through his spotting scope as she sets up. Every movement is economical, purposeful. No fumbling with adjustments, no checking and rechecking. She builds her position the way a master craftsman assembles a tool, each piece fitting exactly where it needs to be. She chambers around and settles behind the scope. Through her optics, the valley resolves into layers of information. Heat shimmerizes in waves, but she's not fighting it. She's timing it, counting the rhythm, watching how the distortion moves across her field of view in predictable patterns. Target appears at 875 meters, a fighter moving between positions, thinking he's concealed by the shimmer. Holly tracks him, watching her scope image dance and blur. She counts under her breath, waiting for the window she described. 3, 2, 1. The air stills for just a moment. Her crosshairs settle. She controls her breathing to the point between heartbeats where the human body is most stable. Her finger presses through the trigger brake with steady pressure. The rifle reports with a sharp crack that echoes across the valley. Downrange, the fighter stumbles and falls, his weapon clattering against rock. "Hit!" Hayes calls out, surprise clear in his voice. "Center mass, target down." Holly is already transitioning to her next target, working her bolt with smooth efficiency. Another fighter, this one at a different range, different angle. She reads the air, times the cycle, takes the shot. "Hit! Another one down!" She transitions again and again. Each shot is deliberate, calculated, final. Where Webb had struggled to get any hits through the difficult conditions, Holly is operating with clinical precision that defies the environment. The hostile fighters begin to realize they're being systematically eliminated. Return fire intensifies, but Holly's position is harder to spot than the ridge where Webb had set up. She uses the terrain, the angles, the fact that no one expected accurate fire to come from that direction. Target 3. A machine gunner who's been suppressing the SEAL element's movement. The range is 920 meters, and he's partially concealed behind a rock formation. Holly reads the geometry, calculates the angle, and puts a round through the narrow gap in his cover. "Machine gun is down!" Drake's voice carries the first hint of hope since the ambush began. Target 4. A spotter directing fire from an elevated position. He thinks he's safe at 1,050 meters, thinks the thermal distortion will protect him the way it's been protecting everyone else. Holly proves him wrong. "Long-range target eliminated," Hayes calls out, and now his voice carries something else. "Respect." The tide of the engagement shifts with brutal suddenness. The hostile force had built their ambush around the assumption that American snipers wouldn't be able to engage effectively through the environmental conditions. They'd been right about that for the first 5 minutes. They hadn't planned for Holly Ramirez. She continues working through targets with methodical efficiency. A fighter repositioning to flank the SEAL element, another machine gunner trying to set up in a new location, a team leader shouting orders that will never be followed. Each shot is a problem solved. Each target is a threat eliminated. The hostile fire begins to slacken, not because they're running out of ammunition, but because the people who know how to use it effectively are disappearing behind precisely placed bullets. Webb, watching through his scope, sees Holly transition to a new target and fire before he even spots the threat. How's she reading them that fast? Hayes doesn't have an answer. He's been spotting for snipers for 8 years, worked with some of the best shooters in the military. What he's watching through his scope doesn't match anything in his experience. Holly acquires Target 9, a fighter who's realized his position is compromised and is trying to withdraw. He's moving fast, bounding between rocks, using cover effectively. She leads him by 3 feet, times her shot for when he'll emerge from behind a boulder, and fires. He doesn't emerge. The round catches him mid-stride. "Moving target 850 meters. Hayes sounds like he's narrating something he doesn't quite believe. "Clean hit." Target 10 appears at extreme range, over 1,100 meters, near the maximum effective range of her weapon system. He's trying to reposition a heavy weapon, thinking distance will keep him safe. Holly makes minute adjustments to her scope, reads the wind at multiple levels, calculates the bullet's arc through air that's been heated to temperatures that play hell with trajectory. The shot takes 3 seconds to arrive. When it does, the fighter drops like someone cut his strings. 1,100-meter hit, Webb says softly. In these conditions, that's not possible. But the evidence is lying on the desert floor, no longer a threat. Drake watches his tactical display as red icons representing enemy positions go dark one by one. The ambush that should have destroyed his platoon is collapsing. His casualties are stable. His people are gaining fire superiority because one woman with a rifle is rewriting the rules of engagement. Target 11 is trying to coordinate the remaining fighters, speaking urgently into a radio. Holly reads his body language through her scope, sees the authority in his posture, understands he's command and control. She removes him from the battlefield with a single shot that travels 940 meters through air that would have defeated most military snipers. The hostile force breaks. The fighters who remain alive make the rational calculation that staying in position means dying in position. They begin withdrawing, abandoning weapons and equipment in their haste to escape the unseen threat that's dismantling their ambush. Holly tracks them as they run, but she doesn't fire. They're no longer a threat. The engagement is over. She safes her weapon, extracts the magazine, and clears the chamber with movements that have been repeated so many times they're automatic. Then she breaks down her position with the same efficiency she used to build it. By the time Drake reaches her location, she's already packing her rifle case. Sergeant Ramirez. Drake's voice carries a tone he usually reserves for peer-level operators. I need you to explain what I just witnessed. Holly looks up from her gear. Her expression is calm, professional, giving away nothing. I took 12 shots at hostile targets. All targets were eliminated. In 90 seconds. Drake isn't asking a question. Through environmental conditions that defeated my best sniper, at ranges that shouldn't be possible with that weapon system. She doesn't deny any of it. Yes, sir. That's not standard military training, Sergeant. That's not something you learn at sniper school or marksmanship courses. No, sir. It's not. Drake studies her, trying to reconcile the support technician from the convoy manifest with the precision instrument of violence he just watched operate. What unit did you come from before this assignment? I'm not at liberty to discuss my previous posting, sir. It's the answer Drake expected, but it tells him everything he needs to know. There are units in the military that don't appear on organizational charts. Programs that train people to do impossible things in impossible conditions. The kind of assignments that come with classification levels that make people stop asking questions. Webb and Hayes' approach, their expressions a mixture of awe and confusion. Ma'am, Webb starts, then stops, unsure how to even frame the question. How did you read those thermals? I've been shooting for 12 years, and I couldn't get a clean sight picture to save my life. Holly considers her answer carefully. The distortion follows a pattern. Once you identify the rhythm, you can time your shots for the stable windows. Nobody shoots like that, Hayes says, not accusatory, just stating a fact. What you did with that moving target at 850 meters, reading the lead on a running fighter through heat shimmer, that's movie stuff. It's physics and practice, Holly replies. Same as any other marksmanship, just more of both. Drake makes a decision that will define the rest of this deployment. Sergeant, I'm formally requesting you be attached to this platoon as our designated marksman. Whatever your original assignment was, I'm declaring it secondary to operational necessity. Holly meets his eyes directly. Sir, I don't think that's advisable. Why not? You just saved 12 of my people. I'd be a fool not to use that capability. Because I'm not supposed to be the one pulling the trigger, Commander. I'm supposed to be the one teaching others to pull it. The implications hang in the air. Drake has been in special operations long enough to read between the lines. Whoever Holly Ramirez was before this assignment, she was important enough that her current role is observation and instruction, not active combat. But circumstances have revealed what she's capable of, and in Drake's experience, you don't waste that kind of talent. Then consider this a teaching opportunity, Sergeant. You just demonstrated techniques my snipers need to learn. I'm sure they'd benefit from your instruction. It's phrased as a suggestion, but they both know it's an order. Holly nods slowly. Understood, sir. I'll coordinate with Chief Webb on training protocols. As she walks back toward the convoy, Webb and Hayes fall in beside her, already peppering her with questions about holdover calculations and reading thermal patterns. Drake watches them go, then keys his radio. All elements, casualties report. The responses come in one by one. Martinez is stable, will need medical evacuation, but will survive. Chen's hearing is impaired, but he's functional. Minor wounds scattered across the platoon, but everyone is alive. They should have taken 70% casualties in that kill zone. They should have lost half the platoon. Instead, they suffered minor injuries and walked away victorious. Because one woman nobody expected to fight had skills nobody expected existed. Drake makes a note to himself to review Holly Ramirez's personnel file more carefully. Whatever clearances are required, whatever strings need to be pulled, he's going to find out exactly who the military sent him disguised as a support technician. The medical evacuation helicopter arrives within the hour, landing in a storm of dust and rotor wash. The casualties are loaded with efficient care, Martinez giving a thumbs up as he's carried aboard, despite the pain medication making his eyes unfocused. Holly helps secure the wounded, her movements practiced and calm. When Chen thanks her for saving his life, she responds with the same neutral professionalism she's maintained throughout. "Just doing my job, petty officer. Glad you're okay." But Webb has been thinking about what he witnessed, analyzing it the way shooters analyze impossible shots. He approaches Holly as the helicopter lifts off, its turbines howling against the desert wind. "Sergeant, I've been running numbers in my head, 1,100 meters, through thermals that were causing 6 inches of mirage drift. The ballistic computer says that shot requires inputs that account for—" He trails off because Holly is already nodding. Temperature gradient at 3 different altitudes, wind variation between position and target, the Coriolis effect at that range, and the fact that the bullet will be in flight long enough for the target to move if he changes position. Webb stares at her. "Most snipers I know can't run those calculations under perfect conditions, let alone in combat while people are shooting back." "Most snipers don't need to," Holly replies. "For most applications, standard ballistic solutions work fine. This wasn't a standard application." Hayes joins them, curiosity overwhelming his usual reserve. "Ma'am, permission to speak freely?" "Granted. You're making those calculations in your head. Real time, while transitioning between targets. It's not human." Holly's expression doesn't change, but something flickers behind her eyes. "It's very human, petty officer. It's just very specialized training applied to a narrow skill set. Take someone with natural aptitude, give them 10,000 hours of practice under progressively difficult conditions, and layer in advanced instruction from people who've spent their lives perfecting the craft. You'd be surprised what becomes possible." 10,000 hours, Webb repeats. That's years of full-time work." "Yes," Holly says simply, "it is." The implication settles over them like the desert dust. Holly Ramirez hasn't been a support technician for very long. Before that, she was something else. Something that required dedication to a single skill that went far beyond normal military specialization. Drake calls them over to the Mobile Operations Center. The tactical display shows the compound and surrounding area, now clear of hostile forces. Drone footage reveals abandoned positions, scattered equipment, and the distinctive heat signatures of bodies that won't be moving again. "Sergeant Ramirez, your engagement eliminated 12 confirmed hostiles and caused the remaining force to break contact. Post-action analysis suggests you disrupted a coordinated ambush that would have resulted in significant American casualties." Holly nods acknowledgement but offers no comment. Drake continues, "I'm writing a commendation for your actions today. You'll be receiving a formal recognition for—" "Sir, respectfully, I'd prefer you didn't." Drake stops mid-sentence. "You're refusing a commendation?" "I'm requesting that my participation be documented in classified channels only, for operational security reasons." There's a long pause while Drake processes this. Then, understanding dawns. If Holly's previous assignment was sensitive enough, public recognition could compromise ongoing operations or expose capabilities that need to remain unknown. "I'll make sure it's handled appropriately," Drake says carefully. "But my people know what you did today. They're going to talk about it." "I understand, sir. I'm just asking that official documentation reflect operational realities rather than individual actions." Webb interjects, "With respect, Sergeant, you saved our lives. You deserve credit for that." Holly turns to face the SEAL sniper directly. "Chief, I did what I was trained to do in a situation that required it. That's not heroism, that's job performance. The real credit belongs to the people who kept fighting when things went wrong, who protected their teammates, who made the hard choices under fire. That's your platoon, not me." It's a deflection, but it's also sincere. Holly genuinely seems uncomfortable with the attention, with the scrutiny that comes from demonstrating capabilities that were supposed to remain hidden. Drake makes the decision to respect her wishes. "Understood, Sergeant. Classified documentation only. But I'm still attaching you to this platoon for the remainder of the deployment. My people need to learn what you know." "Yes, sir." The briefing continues, analyzing the engagement from multiple angles, identifying lessons learned and adjustments to tactics. Holly participates with technical expertise that surprises no one anymore, offering insights into reading environmental conditions that the SEAL snipers absorb, like they're discovering a new language. When the briefing concludes and the platoon disperses to maintenance and rest, Webb pulls Holly aside one more time. "Sergeant, one last question. When you were lining up that shot at 1,100 meters, the one everyone says was impossible, what were you thinking about?" Holly considers the question seriously. "I was thinking that there was a man with a heavy weapon who would kill Americans if I didn't stop him. I was thinking that I had the training and the tools to make that shot. And I was thinking that sometimes the difference between possible and impossible is just willingness to try." She walks away, leaving Webb standing in the desert sun, contemplating a lesson that has nothing to do with ballistics and everything to do with mindset. Over the next 2 weeks, Holly Ramirez transforms the SEAL platoon's sniper element, not through formal classes or structured instruction, but through practical application during operations. She teaches them to read thermal patterns, to time their shots with environmental rhythms, to calculate complex ballistic solutions in their heads rather than relying on computers. Webb becomes her most dedicated student, spending hours practicing the mental mathematics that Holly performs instinctively. He'll never reach her level. 10,000 hours of specialized training isn't something you compress into 2 weeks, but his accuracy improves dramatically. Hayes learns to spot for shooters operating in difficult conditions, identifying the stable windows in thermal distortion that make precision fire possible. His calling of corrections becomes more intuitive, more anticipatory. The entire platoon benefits from her presence. Martinez, recovered from his leg wound and returned to duty, watches her work and realizes that the quiet technician who saved his life operates on a level most people never see. He starts paying attention to the small details, how she positions herself during briefings, how she tracks movement without seeming to, how she's always aware of her environment in ways that suggest deep training. Drake documents all of it in classified after-action reports that will be read by people with clearances high enough to understand what they're seeing. He notes that Technical Sergeant Holly Ramirez possesses specialized skills consistent with advanced marksmanship programs, that her tactical judgment is exceptional, and that her ability to train others is nearly as impressive as her ability to perform. He carefully avoids speculating about where she acquired these skills or what unit she came from. Some questions don't need to be asked out loud. The platoon runs 4 more operations during the deployment. Holly participates in 3 of them, providing overwatch and precision fire support that allows the SEALs to complete their missions with minimal risk. She never takes a shot unless absolutely necessary, always deferring to Webb and Hayes when possible. But when the situation demands it, when the difference between success and catastrophe comes down to a single bullet placed exactly right, Holly delivers with the same clinical precision she demonstrated in that first engagement. On the final operation, they're extracting a high-value informant from hostile territory. The plan is simple: fast infiltration, secure the asset, extract before enemy forces can respond. But plans change when reality interferes. The extraction point comes under fire from a concealed position 2,000 meters away. Effective heavy machine gun fire that pins down the helicopter and the SEAL element simultaneously. Webb can't get an angle on the gun position. Hayes can't spot it through the darkness and distance. Holly identifies it in 30 seconds, reading the muzzle flash pattern and sound signature. She calculates the ballistic solution for a shot at extreme range, in darkness, against a target she can barely see. "I can make that shot," she tells Drake, "but it's going to take everything I have." "Do it." She sets up on a slight rise, using terrain to stabilize her position. The rifle's scope is optimized for daylight shooting, but she's trained for this scenario too. She times the machine gun's fire pattern, identifying the rhythm, predicting when the next burst will come. The shot is released between heartbeats, in the moment of absolute stillness that comes from breathing control perfected through years of practice. 2 seconds later, 2,000 meters away, the machine gun falls silent. The helicopter lifts off with the informant safely aboard. The SEAL platoon extracts without further casualties. Mission accomplished. When they return to base, Webb finds Holly cleaning her rifle with the same methodical care she applies to everything. 2,000 meters, he says, in darkness, against a moving target. That's not in any manual. No, Holly agrees. It's not. Where did you learn to shoot like that? She looks up from her cleaning rod, and for the first time since they've known her, she offers something that might be an answer. There's a place where they take people who show aptitude. Not many people, maybe 1 in 100,000. They teach you to shoot until shooting becomes like breathing. They put you in situations where perfect accuracy is the only thing keeping you alive. They push you until the impossible becomes routine. And then they send you places where your country needs you to do things that can't be done officially. Webb absorbs this. And then what? When they're done with you? Then they give you a new job, usually something quiet where you can pass on what you learned without drawing attention to how you learned it. You become a trainer, an advisor, someone who improves capability across the force without anyone knowing why you're so good at it. But sometimes, Hayes says, joining them, sometimes the situation requires you to do what you used to do. Sometimes, Holly acknowledges, but that's supposed to be rare. She finishes cleaning her rifle and returns it to its case. The weapon disappears, and with it, the part of Holly Ramirez that can put bullets through targets at impossible ranges under impossible conditions. What remains is the quiet technician, the support specialist, the person who's just here to observe and advise. Except everyone knows better now. The deployment ends with the platoon returning to the United States with a mission success rate that draws attention from higher command. Drake's after-action reports are forwarded up the chain, read by people who understand what they're seeing between the lines. Technical Sergeant Holly Ramirez receives orders for her next assignment, Advanced Marksmanship Instruction, Special Warfare Center. It's a lateral move on paper, but everyone who knows the military understands its recognition of capabilities that exist in the shadows. On their last day together, the entire platoon gathers for an informal farewell. There's no ceremony, no speeches, just professionals acknowledging mutual respect. Webb approaches her with something wrapped in cloth. "Sergeant, the platoon wanted you to have this." She unwraps it to find a custom challenge coin. One side shows a rifle scope with crosshairs. The other is engraved with simple text, "Ghost shot, 12 in 90. "That's not regulation," Holly says, but she's smiling. "Neither are you," Webb replies, "but you saved our lives. We wanted you to have something to remember us by. I don't think I'll be forgetting any of you." She tucks the coin into her pocket. "Stay safe out there, Chief, and keep practicing those wind calculations." "Yes, ma'am." Drake walks her to the waiting transport. They don't shake hands. The relationship between commander and subordinate doesn't allow for that kind of familiarity. But the respect is there, unspoken, but clear. "Sergeant Ramirez, I'm curious about something. That first day when you said you could make those shots, were you certain you could do it? Or were you taking a chance?" Holly considers the question seriously. "I was certain, sir. The conditions were difficult, but they were within my training parameters. I knew I could deliver the capabilities required. But you'd never met us before. You could have stayed in the talk, stayed safe, let us figure it out on our own. Why take the risk?" "Because that's not what the training was for, Commander. You don't spend years perfecting a skill just to let good people die when that skill could save them. The risk was acceptable compared to the alternative." Drake nods slowly. "The military needs more people who think like that." "The military has plenty of people who think like that, sir. They're in every unit, at every level. The difference is just in what they've been trained to do." She climbs into the transport without looking back. As the vehicle pulls away, Drake watches until it disappears into traffic, carrying with it one of the most capable shooters he's ever seen. A shooter who's supposed to be a support technician, a shooter who will go back to teaching and advising, living a quiet professional life that doesn't involve combat unless absolutely necessary. A shooter who proved that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones you never see coming. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories every day.